look like scribes maybe wanted to change the text. I'll give you a couple for instances. In Mark chapter 1, the Gospel of Mark, we read at the very beginning that we read, as was written in Isaiah the prophet, behold, I send my messenger before your face to prepare your way for you. Okay, this is in Isaiah the prophet, behold, I send my messenger before you. This is a very interesting passage because the passage that's quoted is not Isaiah. When it says in Isaiah the prophet and then gives the quotation, the passage quoted is actually Exodus. So it's interesting that in the later manuscripts of Mark's Gospel, the text is changed. So that it no longer says in Isaiah, as is written in Isaiah the prophet. Now it says, as is written in the prophets. You see, getting rid of the problem that, in fact, this isn't a quotation from Isaiah. Right? See, so maybe that's a slip of the pen, but it looks to me like somebody saw that this could be taken as a mistake, and they changed it as a result. Or give you a second example. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 2, we have the only story of Jesus as a boy in the New Testament. Jesus is a 12-year-old, and we're told that he and his family have taken a trip to Jerusalem to celebrate a festival, probably the Passover festival. It is a peculiar story because they celebrate this festival, and then the family goes back in the caravan back home, and 3 days later they realize Jesus isn't with them. I mean, you might think they would have checked ahead of time, but he's not there, and so they go back to Jerusalem to try and find him, and on the third day his mother finds him in the temple. And this isn't an accident, by the way, that it's on the third day, right? This is a foreshadowing for Luke of what's going to happen at the resurrection narrative, where on the third day Jesus will rise from the dead. Well, so on the third day, his mother finds him in the temple, and there's 12-year-old Jesus talking to the leaders of the Jews and discussing with them matters of the law. And Mary is not pleased, and she sees Jesus finally after tracking him down for 3 days, and she says, "Son, why have you done this? Your father and I have been looking all over for you." Now, when scribes copied this, they were taken aback. Your father and I? But Joseph wasn't his father, right? Jesus was born of a virgin. So it doesn't make sense for Mary to say, your father and I have been looking all over for you. And so there are changes in the manuscripts. Some manuscripts simply say, Joseph and I have been looking all over for you. Some manuscripts say, we have been looking all over for you. But somebody's changing the text because it could be read as a problem. And so they got rid of the problem. I'll give you a third example. This example is in one of Jesus' discourses in the New Testament, in Matthew chapter 24, in which Jesus is talking about what's going to happen at the end of time. This passage actually was very important. I feel a tangent coming on here, by the way. This passage was very important when I moved to Chapel Hill in 1988. Bob, you had been gone for a year at this time. In 1988, there was a big furor in North Carolina. There were Christian groups who thought that the end of the world was going to happen in 1988. That Jesus was going to come back and take everybody out of the world who were his followers. That's the rapture, right? When the rapture and Jesus comes back, takes people out of the world, and then all hell breaks out on earth for 7 years, and then the end comes, right? So there's a guy who had written a book based on this passage I'm going to talk about in a second. A guy had written this book that was called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Occur in 1988. This book was in 2 million copies. I had students whose parents believed it and literally sold the farm. They thought that Jesus was going to come back in 1988. And so I just showed up in North Carolina kind of blissfully ignorant of these things. And I moved from New Jersey where such things we're not worried about. And but this guy named Edgar Whisenant, he was a NASA engineer who had studied the Bible and come up with 88 reasons why the rapture is going to occur in 1988. And one of the reasons involves this passage I'm going to talk about. Jesus tells this the disciples want to know, when's the end going to come? And Jesus tells them, learn the parable of the fig tree. When the fig tree puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So too, when these things take place, you know that the end is near. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away before all these things take place. So Edgar Weissman, this is one of Edgar Weissman's 88 reasons. So the way it works is this. What is Israel in the Bible? Israel is sometimes represented as a fig tree. Well, when the fig tree puts forth its leaves, you know that the end is near. Well, okay, so if the fig tree is Israel, when does the fig tree put forth its leaves? Well, the fig tree lies dormant over the winter, and then when springtime comes, it comes back to life. When does Israel come back to life? 1948. That's when Israel comes back to life, becomes a nation again. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away before all these things take place. How long is a generation in the Bible? 40 years. 1948 plus 40, bingo, 1988. This was one of the 88 reasons. Now, somebody pointed out to Edgar Weissman that Jesus in the same passage points out that no one knows the day or the hour when the end will come. When Weissman had said that it was going to come during the week of Rosh Hashanah in September. And so they said, but Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour. And Weissman was completely unfazed. He said, I don't know the day or the hour. I just know the week. All right, so this passage actually throughout Christian history has been important because people have always been trying to figure out when the end's going to come. So in this passage, Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour, not the angels of heaven, nor even the Son, but the Father alone. Okay, Matthew 24:36. Scribes copying that found it to be a peculiar thing to say, though. Not even the Son knows when the end is going to come? I mean, surely the Son of God is all-knowing. Isn't he omniscient? And so how do scribes deal with the problem? They deal with the problem by getting rid of the phrase. And so in later manuscripts, the phrase, not even the Son, is taken out, so that now Jesus doesn't claim to be ignorant about when the end is going to come. So that strikes me as probably an intentional sort of change. All right, so you get accidental changes and you get intentional changes. I want to talk about some of the big differences that you get in some of our manuscripts, just so you can get an idea of how significant this problem can be. Probably the most familiar story in the New Testament Gospels is the story of Jesus and the woman taken in adultery. I'm pretty sure this is the best known story of the Gospels because it's in all the Hollywood movies. I mean, if you do a movie about Jesus, you've got to have Jesus and the woman taken in adultery. It's so much a requirement that even Mel Gibson, who the Passion of the Christ, which is about Jesus' last hours, has to get this in, and so he has a flashback showing this scene of Jesus and the woman taken in adultery. So the way the story works, it's found only in the Gospel of John, chapters 7 and 8. And Jesus is teaching the temple, and the Jewish leaders they drag this woman in front of him, and they say, she's been caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says we're to stone someone like this. What do you say? See, this is setting a trap for Jesus, because if Jesus says, well, yeah, stone her, then he's violating his teachings of love and mercy. But if he says, no, forgive her, then he's breaking the law of Moses. So what's it going to be? Well, Jesus has his way of kind of getting out of these traps, as you know, if you read the New Testament. So what he does in this case is he stoops down and he starts writing on the ground. And he looks up and he says, let the one without sin among you be the first to cast a stone at her. Stoops back down, starts writing again. And one by one, feeling guilt of their own sins, they begin to leave until Jesus looks up again and there's no one left. And he says to the woman, is there no one left to condemn you? And she says, no, Lord, no one. Jesus replies, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. There is a textual variant in a now lost manuscript, which when Jesus, about this line about when he says, let the one without sin among you be the first to cast a stone at her. In this one textual variant, it indicates that a stone comes flying out from the crowd, nails the woman in the head. And Jesus says, Mom, sometimes you really tick me off. I made that up.